Here's the process we're going to have. Each candidate is going to get 10 to 15 minutes to speak, and then another 10 to 15 minutes for a Q&A. So that we'll have the speech and then a Q&A in each candidate's order, so we can focus just on that candidate for the Q&A. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to Suzanne Druby, candidate for Pima County Assessor.
Welcome. Thank you all for being here on a beautiful Saturday. I'm glad the rain that's coming decided to not show up until tomorrow. Can everybody hear me okay? No? Okay. Let's see.
He's going to do this.
Okay.
That's it.
Is that better? Okay, great. Again, welcome and thank you for being here. I'm Suzanne Druby. I am the Pima County Assessor. I am running unopposed, which is a good feeling. But thank you for having me anyways. I really appreciate it. The assessor's office, what we do, in case anybody doesn't know, probably most of you don't know, we go out and we identify, list, and value properties for the tax roll, and that value determines your portion of taxes that you're going to be responsible for as far as the county budget and the secondary taxes which pay for our schools and fire departments and things of that nature. That's the statutory definition of what I do and what I'm charged with. But the reality is I do a lot more than that. I ran on a platform of customer service. I believe that anybody that works in government, especially our elected officials, are there to be of service to the constituents and the taxpayers of Pima County. So with that in mind, when I entered into office, the first thing that I did was start to create outreach in the assessor's office, which is something that had never been done before. I got information as to all of the exemptions and valuation relief programs that are available in Pima County into pamphlet format so that we can hand those out to people. We've been able to help an increase of about 30% over what had been done in the past when it comes to valuation relief programs in Pima County. We're really proud of that. That averages about an extra 2,000 people over the last 3 years now are getting some relief on their property taxes. If you know any widows or widowers, we can help widows and widowers. We can help veterans that have disabilities. We can help just anybody that has disabilities. There's a senior freeze. There's all kinds of things that we can do down at the assessor's office to help people that are on fixed incomes that have trouble maybe managing that property tax bill. And that, to me, is really one of the most important things that I do in my job down at Pima County. I work very closely with the other elected officials that you see here. We all kind of tie together. Luckily, I really like everybody that I work with. I hope they feel the same. It's really a team effort, and that's one thing that I want to talk about is the team effort, because not only is it the team effort between the elected officials, but it's the team effort between the elected officials and the community that is so important to everything that we do. Without the community, obviously we wouldn't have a job, and we wouldn't be as efficient in our job if I could not, to some extent, rely on the people that are out there every day seeing things to bring stuff to my attention. So I want to thank you for that right out of the gate. Again, I'm not running against anybody this time, but I am running for and out there fighting for every Democrat that is running out there. this election, I know, and it kind of every election cycle, we kind of stand up and say, oh, this is the most important one, right? But things have really happened over the last, 12 months, to be honest with you, that is really saying this truly is probably one of the, if not the most important election that we've been involved in a very, very, very long time. I am a grandmother of 2 beautiful daughters and the mother of 3 amazing women. And I want to make sure that they are afforded all of the same opportunities that I have been afforded throughout my life. And I think that it's really important that we all get out there, do our part, knock on doors, call people, do whatever you can to get the word out so that we can make sure that our daughters and our sons through our daughters are protected going forward. There's a lot of things at stake this time. And I cannot stress the weight of this election enough. We all have to get out there. We all have to do our part. I love seeing this on a Saturday. This room is packed. To be honest with you, I'm surprised, but what it shows me is that everybody's taking this seriously. I know that we have Madam Recorder here. Is running opposed. Not that she's got it, right? I mean, let's face it. But I'm up here telling you all that I can assure you and I can vouch that she's doing an amazing job. And she's got a lot more work to do, and I will be there to assist her in any way possible, as she's always been there for me. Dustin over here is running unopposed, just like I am. And that's because he does do such an amazing job. And nobody wants his job, but so nobody wants mine either, let's face it. But again, thank you for being here. It is very important. I like seeing it. Make sure that if you need to know how you can help, that you talk to the people here that are organizing the canvassing and the phone banks and things of that nature, so that they can help you get involved and do your part. Is there any questions about the assessor's office? It's kind of nerdy, it's kind of boring, and so I try to keep this short and sweet unless I'm doing a class, and that's not what this is, so you lucked out. Any questions at all?
How much of the money that is collected stays here in Pima County? How is it divided?
All of it. Between when we collect the property taxes, the primary taxes are collected by Pima County, and then the secondary are also collected by Pima County, but those go to all of our schools. So as far as I know, it all stays here. I do put the values on. I don't actually collect the taxes. That's done by the treasurer. Tax assembly divvies all the money out, but pretty sure you can quote me on this. It all stays here, so in Pima County. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about the school districts somehow, some confusion on that. They charge too much. Yeah.
They charge too much. I know, again, I don't collect taxes, so you're asking me some questions I know very little about. I do know that there was I don't want to minimize it by saying that it was a small issue. They did get it straightened out. I can't go into the details because I don't know the details about it. I don't know that any of us are really going to know the details of exactly what happened, but I am aware of the fact that it did get straightened out. Adjustments were made to taxes to make sure that, and I think it had to do with the fire department, correct? In the Sarita, Green Valley, if that's what we're talking about? Oh, schools.
Bye.
Yeah, you've asked me one that because I don't collect taxes and I don't do the tax bills, I am not involved in that. I can tell you that I valued every property in that school district fairly and equitably. So as far as portion-wise, it should be your fair share, and then I leave it to the experts to go ahead and bill that. And they do, every once in a while, they're human. mistakes will happen, but they're very good about getting those corrected and either refunding people or making sure people that got a break that didn't really deserve a break end up paying that back, sadly. I wish we could all get a break and it would just stay that way, but it's the government. It's not perfect, you guys. So, and then what question did you have?
Yes. What would you say is the best part of your job and what could be problematic?
The best part of my job, I'm going to say that the people that I meet every day that come down to my office and my employees is the best part of my job. I worked really hard on the culture down at the assessor's office. I have 150 employees down there, and it is like a big family, and it is wonderful. When I open up a position in my office, I can have upwards of 100 applicants for one position, and those are my entry-level positions. So we've really turned a corner from the past administration. People love working there, and that is the favorite part. Now, the most problematic part of my job is the fact that very few people know what I do, and because of that, they're not aware of a lot of the valuation relief programs that are out there, and it's frustrating. It's really difficult we've got 9,000 square miles in Pima County, and it's hard to get that information out there all the time. News media is really great on reporting when something's not going right, but to try to get them to get information out there can be hard. There's a lot going on out there, and it's just not at the top of their list, so that falls on my shoulders. So I go to the libraries, and I have all my pamphlets in every single library out there on all the valuation relief programs. I go to the HOAs and get my information out that way. So that's the hardest and the most frustrating part, is just getting that information out into the public. Any other questions?
How often do you do the assessment?
We value properties every single year. Yes, and there's over 450,000 properties in Pima County. And we do have to reevaluate every single year. We have we have a computerized mass appraisal system that helps us with that, but a lot of it is done by hand. I have a staff of commercial appraisers of about 25 people, and they are hand valuing a lot of those properties every single year based on the market. So yes, it's challenging, and like I said, we work hard and we play hard in that office. I make sure that they're all appreciated on a monthly basis because they do work very, very hard. So, yeah.
I have a quick question. We had one HOA that we had a rental house in, and those sidewalks were owned by the homeowner. But then, and it was a gated community with private streets that we had maintained. But then the community that we live in is county maintained, and we don't own our sidewalks. So it was hard to really tell though in the plot what was. And I tried to call the assessor's office. I think I got somebody talking about it. It's just like trying to explain that, why some counties are, some HOAs are like that and some aren't.
Yeah, all of the HOAs are different, and county roads and sidewalks and things like that, it really is dependent on the development that you live in. There is typically the right-of-way, which is the road, and that usually will include the sidewalks, but sometimes the HOAs will purchase the roads, and the roads are private, and then they're maintained by the HOA. So every single one is different. I know in my HOA, I don't own or have to maintain the sidewalk or anything beyond the sidewalk. But then, yes, I do know a lot of people where it is their responsibility to manage the sidewalk and the right-of-way. It all depends on the HOA and what's in, the declarations and things of that nature. Yeah.
Do you have a process for appealing the assessment?
Yes. I send notices out every year by March 1st. You'll get your notice of value. And there's information on that notice of value. We have your full cash value, your limited value, the classification of your property. whether it's a residential primary residence or a residential rental. Those are different classes, a 3 and a 4. The primary residence receives the education credit, and the rentals do not. So when you get your notice of value in March, look at it. If you live in that home 6 months and 1 day out of the year, it should be a class 3. And if you do not, then, and you're only there a portion of the year, and you're not there for a full 6 months and 1 day out of every year, it should be a class 4. Okay, and the other thing about that is you cannot homestead a home in any other part of the country. That's another qualification for that. Now, if you look at the value, your full cash value should represent market, what you can sell it for. So if you look at that number and you think to yourself, I could never sell it for that, the next thing you need to do is look for that phone number and give me a call. If you look at it and say, oh yeah, I could sell it for way more than that, and my classification is right, and then you need to fold that up and put it away. Yeah. But we we don't work on commission down at the assessor's office. Okay. We do not. Yeah, we don't make any more money if we raise your value, lower your value. We're strictly determining the portion of the budget you are responsible for with that full cash value. And so call anytime. Your characteristics are going to be on that notice. If you see something that's off, please call the office and we'll get it corrected. If you call me and say, hey, this value is way too high, we are going to sit down and look at it. We're going to look at the sales. We're going to go over those sales with you, explain to you why it's valued the way it is. And if it is too high, which we do see quite often, for whatever reason, we don't know if there's some damage to the property or something's going on that's not readily apparent, your value could be too high. And then we're going to lower it. Again, our objective down at the assessor's office is to make sure that everybody is valued fairly and equitably. And that is the bottom line. So if your value too high, I want to lower it. If you come in and we determine that your value is really, really low, we're not going to raise it right there at that meeting. I'm not going to say that it's not going to happen next year, okay, but it's not going to happen at that meeting. And the other thing is too, is that limited value, that's that other value I kind of glossed over there for a second. That is the value that we use to determine your taxes. Statutorily, that value can only increase 5% every year. So even if you did come in and your characteristics were wrong and we determined that your value should go up, your full cash value could go up, but remember your limited is still only going to go up that 5%. So even if you're looking at your statement and your full cash values increased $50,000, that doesn't mean your taxes are going to shoot through the roof. They're only going to increase 5%. Okay, well, your value that we do your taxes on is only going to increase 5%. The Board of Supervisors, and I'm not going to speak for them, but they set that tax rate. They have no parameters set on them like I do. And so if the tax rate goes up, then you're going to be looking at a 5% increase due to the value and then an additional increase based on the tax rate. If the tax rate stays flat, you can pretty much count on a 5% increase because of that limited value going up by statute. Okay, if the tax rate goes down, that's when you will see a little bit less than 5% because it's going to counteract that 5% value increase a little bit. It's a little complicated. I'm working on a brochure right now. I am the brochure queen down at the county. So, yeah. Yes?
So what are the advantages of homesteading a home, and how do you do that?
The advantages of homesteading a home, like I said, is that education credit that you would receive. Everybody that owns a primary residence that live in it 6 months and 1 day and don't have another primary residence anywhere else in the country will receive the education credit, and usually that, I want to say on average, is about $300. It can range depending on the value of the house and the location that you live in. But if it's not your primary residence and it is a rental, you will not receive that credit. So that's where the difference comes in between a class 3 primary residence and a class 4 rental. So, yeah,
What if you have dogs and cats?
don't live in Springfield. Yeah, I have nothing to do with dogs and cats, although all of mine come from pack, so. Yeah. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dustin William, who's running for Pima County Superintendent of Schools.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Dustin Williams. I'm running for the Pima County School Superintendent. I ran for the Pima County School Superintendent in 2016, and we won. And I'm really excited about that because my background and passion by Susan is education. It's where I grew up. I was a coach, and I became an elementary school teacher. And then I got into administration, became a principal. And then at that time, I was also a PC down in the central part of Tucson. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I started looking at the position of the Pima County School Superintendent. I said, hey, well, I didn't know about it. And I started asking other people about this position. I said, hey, do you know who the Pima County School Superintendent is? And they go, oh, you mean for TUSD? I said, no, for the entire county. And they're like, oh, no, I didn't know that. And I thought to myself, well, there's a scenario that's a need. We need to have an individual that works with our communities, brings the people together, kind of like what Susan was saying, as a team, works with the schools, fights for legislation, and fights for public education, and brings us all together. And so I jumped on board and we won. And so 2020 came around, and the voters decided that I must have been doing something well, because I ran unopposed in 2020, and I did it for another 4 years, and then I'm running unopposed again in 2024. So I'm really enjoying my constituents in Pima County, and I am thanking you for everything that you've done. As a matter of fact, you have signed, I don't know which ones have, but Green Valley had a lot of petitions signed for our campaign with my campaign manager, Nathan Bacall, and your representatives here. So I'm really, really thankful for the support that I've got from this group. And I'm really, really thankful for the work that you're putting in to our political atmosphere. In 2016, before 2016, education was not what is called the bully pulpit. It wasn't the hot striking thing when you went into a campaign arena. Education has changed. It is now one of the number one, maybe number two, and I would rather be number two than number one, because our elections house is probably number one as far as the most controversial, legislative-wise and politically-wise. But number two is education. And you can see what's happening in our school systems right now. We have a massive issue. And the issue is we are pushing people away from the profession. We're not drawing professionals in. And it's not about our advocacy. And it sure is not our incredible kids. Our students are absolutely amazing. And it's not the current staff that we have. It's a blend of what's happening at our state level. Leadership is important. When we walk around and we say get out and vote, and we walk around and say, hey, know your elected official, it is a real thing. 4 years ago, or actually 2 or 3 years ago, we had a state superintendent by the name of Kathy Hoffman. Well, we have a different superintendent now that has a total different leadership style. In a matter of 3 years, I can tell you numerous districts have been sued. They're being sued. That is the mentality of our leadership in the state. We've also seen a dismantling of an infrastructure that is already completely underfunded. So when you talked about your tax and you said where all your money goes, we end up paying taxes. But a lot of our money right now is being fueled into another educational part called a voucher program. This is terrible. It's terrible for a couple reasons that I want to explain the parts that are really bad. The parts that are really bad are, it's two things. It's accountability and it's transparency. Those are the two really, really bad things with the voucher program. And we can talk about how it's funneling approximately at this moment $1 billion. We're paying $1 billion a year to the state for this program, which is educating approximately 75,000 kids. $1 billion, 75,000. So you get a minimum of 7,000 to be in the voucher. And your voucher can go to a homeschool family that can do their own services, or the voucher goes to a private school. The problem with this is we can't regulate or see any of it. So if I go to a district school or even a charter school, I can see your letter grades that you're getting in testing. Matter of fact, it's mandated for these schools to perform these tasks. It takes a lot of work to do that. It's a lot of pressure on the students. These testing it cause massive anxiety. Well, at the private schools and at the home schools, they don't have to do any of that. But they're still getting funded by public dollars. The other issue is it was sold that poor kids would have an opportunity to go to a really high, classy private school. Again, there's nothing wrong with private school. The problem is we know that 7,000 isn't enough to go to most of the private schools. So how are they paying the difference of $3,000, maybe $6,000, $7,000 to go to this private school when they only are allotted 7,000? They're not. How are poor kids making it to those schools? They're not. So there's a lot of inequities in that system and in the state of Arizona that we have these challenges. So what happens to the inner system of the school system in our public schools is you have two things that are really, really bad. One is the starting salary are numbers like $38,000 and $42,000 a year here. That's $38,000 and $42,000. Those are some numbers you're going to hear for a starting salary. And then number two, the political landscape for educators now are you're going to be penalized if you teach this sort of way or you do something or you say something. And this is the burden that is going on our professionals currently at this moment. They're overworked, they're underpaid, and the support system from our highest leaders at the state level is not there. And it's really, really sad because ultimately you need these champions at the forefront of the classroom inspiring these young kids to do incredible stuff. But if you have a shortage of teachers, what happens is you end up getting substitute teachers. Now, substitute teachers have been a blessing because without them, we're doubling classes. But the problem with a substitute teacher, or the challenge, is they're just not always there because they're a substitute. So it's a different person. Education doesn't work that way for students. Students need to have a regular person that they can trust and end up opening up their hearts to and then learning. There's two things that happen in education. One is you teach the concept. Two is you are a classroom manager. You manage a live. And with that student, if this was the class, the teacher gets to deal with you and everything that's going on in your life, and then everything that's happening in the environment of your home. Because we have to also deal with the families. So what happens is if there's somebody not here regularly where you can confide and trust, students have nowhere else to go and talk to some of their peers or to talk to a counselor or to talk to someone. It's just not happening. So we're seeing some of the highest levels of depression and social emotional learning challenges that we've ever seen in our age with kids. When we want to support them as a community, we have to then look at two things. One, again, is the concept and the managing part. Well, we can do the teaching part. That's the easy part. But the hard part is when you get into the social emotional learning aspect. mental health, trauma-informed care. There is nothing wrong with mental health. Every single person in this room, including myself, has something mental going on in my life. We have challenges. But when you're an adolescent, learning how to work through those challenges is really difficult. Currently, right now, with the leadership that we have at the state level, you're not allowed to use the word social-emotional learning. If you go to other states, you lose funding for teaching social-emotional learning with students. So there are some major, major things on our doorsteps happening. And one of the blueprints, and I know everybody's heard of this 2025 book, right? You've heard about it. Inside the 930 some odd pages is a blueprint for the voucher system. That blueprint is Arizona's blueprint for all of the other states in the nation for how voucher systems will work. The voucher program was passed by the Republican legislature, which is a majority in our state, and it has been for years. So when people come and they say, "Hey, Dustin, how do you? I need help. What do you do? How do you change it?" I go, "Well, I can tell you this. The first thing we got to do is we got to flip a house. Has to happen." Because as you were talking about the 03 tax debacle that happened to Continental and Oracle and other state or other counties in the state, that was a state legislative directed mandate. That came from the legislature. The legislature had this idea to tax K-8 schools differently than they would the regular way that they would do it. And so the state legislature passes stuff all the time, and they don't do their homework. They never brought a focus group of recorders down from the county and treasurers and county school superintendents and said, "Hey, will this affect you in a way if we do this?" And we said, "Well, yeah, of course it is," and it did, and it ended up costing the taxpayers in Continental about a couple $100 a year more, and in some cases more than that. The good thing is that our office, single-handedly with the treasurer's office and Pinal County, all three of us worked on this tirelessly. My team, all the teams, that has been corrected. So as you were charged more this last year, you will be charged less than normal, and it will even out in 2 years. So you had a spike, you'll have a dip, and then you'll even out on that. So
Start winding down to Q&A.
yep. So here's really the message today. The message today is when we talk about people in leadership roles and people that are doing good job, they're doing a good job, and the vision that they have is for the real holistic being of the humanity of our people. These are the people that we need to do whatever it takes to get in the office. I am truly honored and blessed to be here and to be in the position I am. To be running against someone is very difficult because you're doing basically 2 jobs, 24/7. You're sleeping all night long. So I am imploring and asking every single one of you, find someone that you know that is on that fence and is kind of thinking about, well, I'm not sure who I want to vote for, and just say, hey, the trajectory of our kids, the need for our students to have a complete, fulfilling education has got to be taught in at least 2 ways. One is the concept, 2 is the mental health and well-being of our children. That's all I have for you today. Thank you. I'm going to take some questions here now. And before I do that, schools.pima.gov. If you write that down or you remember that, schools.pima.gov, that is everything to learn about my office and what we do. Sir.
How did the voucher system get so blown out of hand? Originally, when Ducey got it passed, it was supposed to be $1.5 million. Now it's over $1 billion. How did that happen?
Excellent question, sir. How did this get out of control? So, in probably in somewhere between 2016 and 2018, the idea of the voucher system started. And they sold it as poor students need to have the opportunity to go to private schools. And so what they did is they put some parameters on it. And they crafted the legislation, and the Republican majority passed it, and every single Democrat at the legislature voted against it. And this is how it always goes. And when you have one chamber that's always an R, and you have another chamber that's always an R, the problem is there's no compromise. And everything that goes through on the vision of those two of that party is what passes. And so that's where it got created. It started with some parameters. And the parameters actually made a little bit of sense. It said, well, if you had a student with special needs, they could go to a private school and get voucher money to go to that private school if that school was doing it better than where you were at. I said, okay, maybe, I don't know. But that was a rule. That was some sort of, still not transparent. You don't really know what's going on at the other school, but that was the rule. The other rule was if you were on a reservation. If you lived on a reservation, you could get monies to go to a private school. It's okay, maybe, I don't know very many private schools that are on reservations. So that is another issue if you really look at these details. But anyways, it passed with these certain parameters. One other parameter was if your school, your school where you live, was a D or an F school. If it was a D or an F school, your child could qualify for a voucher to go to a private school. So if you were a mother or father and you were in an area and the school was an F school, and that's your public school, and you said, hey, I want $7,000. It's $7,000 per kid. It can go as high as $24,000 per kid, per child. Okay, so there was these parameters, and it passed. And it actually was somewhat under control. It really was in the low millions. It still wasn't positive because it was funneling money to private organizations on a public dollar, which is not allowed to be done. You can't give public funds to private entities. It's a gift clause if you really want to get into it. So then the Republican legislature said, you know what? This voucher program is working so well, and it's not even costing that much money. We need to expand it and make it a universal, no rules, anybody can go. And the public was like, whoa, hold on. Republican and Democrat and Independent, every one of them said, whoa, hold on. So we took it to a vote, and it went to the voters. And it failed miserably. No, it lost. The voters of Arizona voted against this. Well, Governor Ducey and his Republican colleagues, 2 years later, at about 3 in the morning when they were doing the budget, wrote this in the budget, and they passed it swiftly in the middle of the night, and it became law. And that's how it got out of control. And they said it was going to be about $50 million. And what was the craziest thing was the minute it went live, which is 90 days after the sign and die of the budget, which is typically around May and June, 90 days after that, our county school superintendent's offices, the phones would not stop ringing because of how many people started calling to get on the voucher system. And it was all families that were at private schools that could now just get a $7,000 voucher to basically pay for their child to continue going to private school. And that's how it happened. And that's where we are today.
Thank you.
And I know we want to talk about Project 2025, and I know that we want to get rid of the education department, but I would really love some talking points about what the education department, Department of Education, does for people, because I can hear the arguments, well, different again, education is blah, 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 so I'd love to have some real strong comments to what the Department of Education does for us.
Sure, Department of Education, you can go ahead and take away millions and millions of grants federal grants that perform tons and tons of programs for public schools. They get federal grants from the Department of Education. You can also get rid of all of special education federal law services. Anybody that has or knows anyone with special needs, Down syndrome, autism, anything like that, that all of that is regulated federally. That all will be pushed aside. No one will be able to regulate that. And those students have some of the toughest challenges. They are brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. I will take them toe-to-toe with any other of the students, but they need different support structures. And you have to have those support structures. And that's federally regulated. All of your food programs, free and reduced lunch, say goodbye to that. That's going to get yanked. That's all federally mandated. You're going to lose some really, really big, huge oversights of federal government stuff. The federal government, we all say government's crazy and does all these things, but the reality is it's needed in our societies. It conducts extremely important work at the absolute highest level of detail. I tell my office this all the time. The difference between elected offices and regular businesses, there's a lot, but two really big things. When we make a mistake, it's a big mistake. So when you see a mistake at the state level, like the 03 district and the tax, that affected thousands of voters and how much money they're paying. Because that was a mistake and that was done wrong in the algorithm up by the legislature on that one. But our office as well. If we make a mistake, it doesn't affect just our office and our corporation. It affects the entire county of Pima County.
We have just one more question.
Okay, one more question. Sir.
How did Tom Horn get elected?
How did Tom Horn get elected? How did Donald Trump get elected in 2016? I'll tell you how. I'm going to tell you real quick because I want to get my counterpart on that actually has a race and she's going. And I want to say something for her also before I get off. In politics, you have to run a very savvy race and you got to work really, really hard. Unopposed or not, you got to show up at Green Valley at 3 o'clock and you got to come say hi and tell your voters like what's up and be there. And then you have to play a little bit of a cutthroat game when it comes to your opponent. And Kathy unfortunately ran what's called clean. And that only gave her $250,000. Tom Horn came within over $1 million. And he flooded the airways and the streets with his name Tom Horn. And Kathy Hoffman just didn't have enough time to get that name recognition. So when the voting came to Arizona, which is still a purple state, people went down the line. I spoke to some really good Republicans that love public education. I said, hey, why didn't you vote for Kathy Hoffman? Did you vote for Tom Horn? And they looked at me and go, Dustin, you're the only superintendent I know. So they voted the D on that side, but then the rest, they just went down the ballot. And so that's what happens with some of those races.
Do you know the term ACEs, A-C-E-S?
Yes.
Adverse childhood events?
Yes.
Okay, they're doing a lot of research on that. They're finding that even if a child, the little T, trauma, whatever it is, just has physical, biological, mental, every effect you can think of on a developing child. So you were talking about mental health and having the teachers having to deal with all this stuff that's happening in front of them and also the environment.
Yes.
I can recommend the book.
I'd love to get it. I'll get with you after. Just for the record, my name's Dustin Williams. I'm asking for your vote. I'm not asking for any donations, but if you were thinking you would maybe give some money to my campaign, I would like you to give it to Gabriela Cansada's campaign today. Okay?
Running for Pima County Recorder.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and pass these around. Since we're talking about donations and all of that, So skugtash anya nepchugi Gabriela Cáceres Kelly pismo ochkuk amjut anya would kapima chukshan ohandam. Hi, my name is Gabriela Cáceres Kelly. I'm from the communities of Bisinamo and Cook, which are located on the Thornaltham Nation. I was able to hear your land acknowledgement this morning. That is absolutely the community that I'm from. I grew up there until around the age of 14 and have been living in Tucson ever since. I am your elected county recorder. I have been in office since 2001. My office is responsible for voter registration. We have around 630,000 registered voters and counting. I'm also responsible for early voting and document recording, which is the preservation of mostly property documents. We have around 9 million and growing. When I first ran for this office beginning in early 2000, it was a quiet, sleepy office that most people had no idea even existed. No one really cared about this office because they had always just cast their ballot and really never questioned anything about it. And then the 2000 election happened, and prominent people, I don't want to say people who have, I'm very careful to not say names of people who create harm in our community, but we all know that we had prominent politicians who were questioning the integrity of elections and put in a ton of election conspiracy theories into our realm. And now it has changed the face of elections, probably permanently. My office, again, was a sleepy and quiet administrative office. I spend the majority of my days writing memos, creating plans for the future. We're thinking about ways to expand voting. It was not a political position. It is now a political position because only one party seems to really be supporting the election integrity and understanding that it is safe and secure as it always has been. And thank you for that, because that is you. When I got into office in 2021, the very first thing was a flood of legislative bills, around 180 bills having to do with elections. For context, the year before there was around 80, and the year before that there was around 50. And it was common to have maybe about 10 or so, really just to clean up language, put forth by recorders or elections directors throughout the state. As I said, this has changed. I am part of the Recorders Association. I'm the vice president of that association, and my counterpart, the president, didn't get reelected because he was a Republican who talked about the security and the integrity of elections. There have been dire consequences, and these positions are now being targeted. In Pima County, I am being challenged. However, my candidate is kind of missing in action, which is okay because we knew I was going to win anyway. However, I am still aggressively campaigning, and a reason for that is my campaign has been able to reach young people, people of color, progressives, people who otherwise are not interested in voting. My campaign has a very huge following. We have been able to turn communities out. It has been very exciting, and in this last primary election, besides Ruben Gallego, who is running for a statewide office, who is running a multi-million-dollar campaign with TV ads and print ads and mailers, I was the second highest vote getter in Pima County. What we're seeing from that is understanding that people are coming to the ballot, and they are skipping numerous people before they're getting to my name, and then they're choosing to vote my name. And so because of that, I have taken it upon myself. I am canvassing alongside Adelita Grijalva and Raul Grijalva, Betty Villegas, a couple of TUSD school board candidates. We're really, really focused on getting in touch with the voters who we don't ordinarily communicate with. And so because of that, because of this high profile that was bestowed upon me by election deniers, we are using that to bring attention to the very real issues and help people understand just the basics of voter registration, early voting, and how to cast their ballot. One of the main things that I'm very, very proud to have done in my first term is to move from paper poll books to electronic poll books, which means you can now vote anywhere in the county. That is a huge, huge change. That means that in prior elections, we would have around 18,000 provisional ballots that would have to be hand processed after our regular ballots will go through. That would take days and days. It would take every single person who worked in the office, plus our temporary help, almost weeks for us to do that. Just by moving from paper poll books to electronic poll books, we went from 18,000 in one cycle to 2,500. That means more people's ballots are being counted. Because what was happening is if somebody was registered to vote and assigned to the church, and that was their polling location, and instead they went to the library, just that small difference, even if there was no difference on that ballot that was issued, maybe even neighbors who live across the street, some arbitrary invisible line would prevent the one person who was supposed to vote at the church and voted at the library, that ballot would not be counted. By federal law, we would have had to wholly discard that ballot, even if it was completely the same. And so making that change has literally meant more votes for Pima County, and I'm very proud to have been able to bring that. When I walked in the door, I was asked about ballot drop boxes. That is unfortunately the one campaign promise that I made into 2020 that I have not yet delivered on. And that's because we've had to make so many changes. We've had to bring the office up with technology. We were working with out-of-date technology, equipment that was maybe 15 years old. If you think about how old even an iPhone, a smartphone is, think about what that means for the equipment within my office. There had been so many things like that my staff asked me, please no more changes. Please let's do this in 2025. And that's what we plan to do. We plan to bring ballot drop boxes to Pima County in 2025. You'll see them probably here in 2026. I am getting word of special elections that are being declared now. It looks like we're going to have an election every single year. There used to be, what I was told when I took the job, is you'll have a big election year and then it'll be a quiet year, and then the next year you'll have another big election year and then quiet. So it's up and down and up and down. Well, I haven't had the down. So we have had City of Tucson consolidated elections with bond overrides. We've worked very closely with the school superintendent, the county superintendent, and to make sure that we're making it as easy for voters to understand why they're getting a ballot or why they're not getting a ballot. And I'm very happy to see your list of frequently asked questions. I think you are all on the right track it needs to be easy for people to understand this process. Election law is very complex. It is very, very complicated, and the needs of our community are very, very diverse. It might seem simple to just, all anybody has to do is fill out a voter registration form. We know that that's not true, because depending on who you are and where you come from and maybe the documents that you have at your disposal, that might not be the same thing for you. One thing that we're hearing a lot about, I'm getting a lot of questions about, is the overturning of a stay for the Supreme Court that requires us to collect proof of documentary proof of citizenship at the time of registration. This seems like, well, of course we would want that, right? Not really. We are one of 2 states in the entire country that is asking for documentary proof of citizenship, and the theories behind it are xenophobic and based in white supremacy. It is because of the southern border. We are not seeing undocumented migrants registering to vote. Typically, undocumented migrants are trying to maybe lay low from government officials. It really just does not make any practical sense. However, who is being harmed, typically the groups that are most impacted are students who live in the dorms, who don't drive because they live in the dorms and they can walk to class. They don't pay their bills, so they don't have a utility bill. They don't have any proof of residency. They probably don't have their birth certificate, because why would they have their birth certificate in their dorm room, right? Especially if they're going to move the next semester or year to year. So college students are the most likely to be impacted. The next most likely are elders who no longer drive and who maybe are living in assisted living, because they no longer are paying utility bills one by one. They're no longer holding on to their important documents in a communal living space. And then the last group is Native Americans. Native Americans who are utilizing tribal IDs for most things, or have low access to internet and ways to send in their documentation, plus it's super far from town. So it's been really frustrating to see some of these legislative decisions come down that are harming our community. And it's right, we absolutely need to make that change, and we need Arizona to be blue. One important thing that we're talking about over and over and over, I know you guys have it a little bit here in Green Valley. I came through and I saw all the Trump Vance signs on the way here, and so it's here too. But reliably, Pima County is reliably blue. We're a blueberry. We're a blueberry in the bowl of tomato soup. That is Arizona. Maricopa, they are having to persuade voters. They have 2 types of outreach that they do. They have persuasion, and then they have get out the vote. Here in Pima County, we just need people to get out to vote. And so it's so critical that we remember that we're reaching out to our friends and family, that we're texting our group chats, that we're talking about it in all of the spaces where we are, because a lot of people are like, yeah, it's fine, I've got it, I know who to vote for. Yes, but have you checked with your nephew Mitchell? Have you checked with your friend Rebecca, who always leaves town and doesn't know whether or not she submitted her ballot? And then the other thing that We have a lot of retirees in Green Valley. For any of you who are taking a wonderful cruise and will be out of town during that time period, there's still an option for you. There's always an option. We can send a ballot anywhere in the country at a temporary address, or we can send it anywhere in the world. If you are not sure where you're going to be and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going on this cruise, I booked it at the worst time, I didn't want to be here during this whole presidential cycle, I don't know what port I'm going to be, we have an option for you. We can actually send it electronically. We can email you a ballot if you're out of the country. We've sent a ballot. We have sent a ballot. Oh, we have an astronaut amongst us? Amazing. We have sent a ballot to submarines. We have sent physical ballots to the desert in Saudi Arabia on the back of a camel and had people vote on the back of a camel. I'm not even joking. That's real. And Arizona, not Pima County necessarily, but Arizona has sent ballots to space. And so our astronauts can vote, which is really exciting. There is always an option. Please pick up the phone. Please check in with us. If there is an emergency that you're experiencing where you find yourself in a place where you can't go home, maybe that's the hospital, maybe it's jail. I don't know what you guys do here in Green Valley. Not judging. If there's a reason that you can't vote, sometimes in a very extreme situations, we have very limited resources, but sometimes we can actually send a team out to you to cast your vote. So my recommendation is to vote by mail. This cycle, we will have a 2-card ballot. What that means, it's a front and a back, and a front and a back. That is a lot. That is a lot of opportunity for mistakes to be made, for people to get frustrated. People are going to need your support. For people that you know who hem and haw about sending back their ballot, ask them, do you want us to go through it together? Do you want to have a party? And then just make sure that you are putting your page 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 back into your envelope, because if there's a situation where there's one envelope that says there's 2 page 1s and then the other one has 2 page 3s, we can't count that. So my office does not count that, but the elections department has said if that's the situation, we would send it back to the recorder's office. We would contact you and let the voter know of their error. So just be very careful.
Can we get to the Q&A?
Yeah, so I see some hands already. Let's go ahead and take that question, yeah.
Okay, I have a friend who's expecting her early ballot in the mail, except she's in Ohio right now with her husband in the bill. And she kind of thought it would come to her, but they don't forward, correct?
It is illegal for the federal government, otherwise USPS, to forward a ballot. If you have a hold or an automatic forward or something like that, you should call our office, and instead we can put a temporary ballot request to Ohio or wherever that person is, and make it so that she doesn't have one sent to her at home.
Can that all be done over the phone?
Yes, it can be done over the phone, and it can actually be done online as well. So you can visit our website, recorder.pima.gov. Yes?
So I just wanted everybody to know, I don't know how many here live in LD 19, but we raised $30,000. We're going to mail out 39,900 slate cards. So every registered Democrat, every independent with a score of 5 and above, every Republican woman that lives with one Democrat, is a great bargain.
Beautiful.
Card with every candidate. And we had to design these for 5 counties, because we have 5 counties in LD 19, but they went to print. So you will get those, we'll mail them the same day they mail early ballot.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. I have a question here.
Yes, when you were talking about the 4 pages of ballots,
Yes.
I wondered how that was going to impact curing ballots.
So the term, so let me explain what curing a ballot, because people ask that all the time, is my ballot sick? Why does it need to be cured? A ballot that needs to be cured, that's the term that's used. I don't know, we didn't come up with it. We had tried to change it, but it's what the public understands the most, is if we have a question about your signature, that ballot will go to an operator, and that operator will contact you. We will try to call you. We will text you. We'll send you an email. We'll send you a paper letter. And then the next week, we'll do it all over again and over and again. And we'll keep doing that until we contact you. And if we don't contact you, sometimes we'll take a look at who else is in the household and can we contact them. And we do everything we can in our power to try to contact you, to let you know that something, that we had a question with your signature. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll call you and we'll ask you for some security questions. If you don't feel comfortable answering those questions, I don't ever feel comfortable when I get a cold call from an unknown number. Tell them I'm going to hang up and I'll look up your website and I will call your main number. And that they should be giving you that advice. I hear it every single time that I'm in the facility. It's very common. Don't feel bad. Nobody is going to have their feelings hurt. It's very standard. Go ahead and hang up the phone. Call us back. They're going to check to see what your security questions are. This is information that only we have from when you registered to vote that is not publicly available by law. We're going to confirm that it was you, and then we're going to say, did you cast this ballot? And you're going to say yes. And there might be a question like, did you break your hand? Because it kind of looks like yours, but not really. And a lot of times that might be the question. Sometimes if you get that question too many times, your signature changes a number of times throughout your lifetime. Mine used to be very, very long, and I have noticed as of late, even when I'm really concentrating, a lot of times I'm only putting my initials and Kelly. That's it. And I'm like, when did that happen? I didn't even notice that I started changing my signature. You can put in another form on a piece of paper, on a voter registration paper form, which you can download from our website, or we can mail you one. And then we can get another sample, and that will go into your file. And if you've changed your address 12 times, or you've registered and done all of these transactions, all 10 of those voter registration forms will be there with 10 different samples, and we'll be able to click through and say, oh, that is that person. That is that person who signed that ballot. Question here?
Have you actually seen any examples of voter fraud, like they say on the other side?
Examples of voter fraud. Yes and no. The yes is that there are people who think they can outsmart the system, but we have protections in place that don't allow for that. And so when people are trying to maliciously break the law, we find them. We find them and we report them. We report people who intentionally try to double vote as if we're not. They will literally go from one location to another location on the same day, and we'll see multiple provisional ballots. And we're like, what was this person doing? And we can tell, because then they might go to a third place, that person was intentionally trying to break the law. And sometimes, that is real. That does happen. But again, the safety practices that we have in place do not allow for us to accept more than one ballot from one person. The system literally will not allow it. And in order for you to get a ballot, it has to be assigned to a person. Even to be sent over to the elections department, we have these rosters that we have to send. And if there's a ballot that is in there, or a ballot that isn't there, we work with them to find why, you know, if two ballots stick together or something like that. It is every single piece of, every single ballot affidavit is carefully cataloged until it is transferred over to the elections department. There's no opportunities for that. And as for people, like the lengths that somebody would have to go to fake a voter registration, to create fake voter registrations with fake signatures and send them to a household, the amount of work that would have to go into that is very extreme, and it's not likely. We're not seeing widespread voter fraud. Yes.
Say someone didn't have a driver's license, they weren't paying taxes. Is there like a state ID that they can get?
I try to reference this. Homeless people can vote. You do not have to be a taxpayer. It is no longer required by law that you be a rich white landowning man, right? We have changed that. No, that is real, because that at one point was our law in the United States. It is not a requirement for people to own property or to live in a certain area. A driver's license is very helpful for us because we're able to cross-reference the motor vehicle division records, and we're able to obtain a signature from them. And that's really helpful. Most people do. If you have a state ID, that the same situation applies. But part of our verification is sending mail. So a person could register to vote we would now have to see something like a birth certificate or a passport or a naturalization certificate. And they would need to be able to accept mail from someplace. But as long as they did, we would be able to register that voter. And they are swearing an oath that they are an American citizen, that they are eligible to vote, that they are 18 and above. That is part of the form. And again, we're the only state, or we're one of two states in the whole country that's asking for people to prove that they're citizens. And for those who don't prove that they're citizens, there's something called a federal-only ballot. The federal-only ballot has 3 races on it. It's the president, the Senate, and the Congress. So what people are alleging in the news, that all of these undocumented immigrants are fraudulently registering to vote, they're fraudulently registering to vote, sending the government their current address so they can get that ballot, and then they only get a ballot with 3 races on it, and they're risking deportation for that? It literally doesn't make any sense. It's very ridiculous, and we don't have any instances of that happening.
How about if you take just 1 minute?
Just one more question. Who's got a good one? Yes.
So I heard about a school program, and they're trying to inform people that live abroad, U.S. citizens that live abroad, that they're eligible to vote. So I think they can only get
abroad.
Only, but they can get. So can you send that out? Can they vote by email? And do you have information of that?
So the question is about citizens abroad. A citizen, a United States citizen, is eligible to register at the last known address in the United States, which is why often people say, well, there's somebody who says they live in my home address, but they don't. There's only me and my wife, and there's this other person who says they're registered. Well, we don't know what the situation is. That might be a citizen abroad, and they're eligible to use that address. And furthermore, if they have children abroad who are also U.S. citizens, like we have so many of our military who have children abroad, their children are eligible to use that same address to vote in that same precinct where they lived when they did have an address in the United States, and we send them the full ballot. We can either mail it and a postal mail. We pay for international mail, so we do that. And some people will fax it back to us. Some people will email it back. It just depends on the category when they register. It's called a federal postcard application, and they have to go through a certain set of requirements, and it's only good for a certain amount of time, and then they have to renew. But they get the full ballot. Another thing that they're able to do is, let's say that somebody was in a combat area and they're not able to really check to see who's on the ballot and do all their research. There's something called a federal write-in ballot where they could actually just write, I want to vote for all the Democrats, and they can send it. And what would happen is when we get that ballot, we are verifying that that person is eligible to vote in Pima County. We send it over to the elections department, and they do something called a duplication, where they have two people of opposite parties sit across from one another, and they determine the voter's intention. If they cannot decide between the two of them, then they take it to another person. It could go to another person. But there's this very precise balance that they have to do, but they have to agree. Well, this person said I wanted to vote for all of the Democrats. That was their intention that they wrote, and that's what they will duplicate on that ballot.
Can you answer that question?
I voted twice overseas.
You voted twice overseas?
Right, once in Europe and once in Asia. And they do a very good job of getting everyone to vote. It's a big community, event.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It is very exciting, and because of that, my staff kind of does like I think Canada is going to be first. I think France. And then we get the announcement of who was back at what time, and it's very exciting. And people sure. I just want to let you know that we have been spending a lot of time working on these frequently asked questions on our website, recorder.pima.gov. And again, if you would like to support me in this work, Gabriella for Recorder, that is all the words spelled out, Gabriella, F-O-R, recorder recorder.org. And I have fun signs. My scooter signs are there in the back of the room for you all to take, and I appreciate all of your support, and feel free to continue with those questions.
I want to say thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thanks. So I do have a few very quick announcements. In terms of upcoming programs, next Saturday, the 21st, we're going to have a Countdown to Victory rally. This is being co-hosted between Green Valley Democrats and the Democratic Club of Quail Creek. It's being held from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Madera Clubhouse at Quail Creek. On the 28th, 2 weeks from today, in this room at 3 o'clock, we're going to have the program on ballot propositions. And many of you have heard there's a lot of them on the ballot this year. That program is going to be dedicated specifically to discussing those propositions. The day after that, on Sunday the 29th, there'll be a program in here on Stopping Project 2025. And that is being presented by the Arizona Democratic Party Coordinated Campaign. That will be at 2 o'clock in this room. Our programs are usually at 3. But the one on Sunday the 29th will be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in this room. We are a membership-supported club. You can renew your membership at headquarters, or you can do it. We're set up in the back to do that here. We have more Harris t-shirts, okay? There's some other t-shirts you might see that hang around. So yeah, please feel free to stop by, and I think we have some in the back there too. We also have yard signs at the headquarters, and we are taking donations for the Stop the Project 2025 program, and we ask if you can support that. We'll be putting up signs in Green Valley If you'd like to join us this Monday, September 16th, and again September 23rd at 7:30 in the morning, wear a hat, bring water, and a hammer. The hammer is for the signs, not for the opposition. The We Care campaign for September is Voices from the Border, and I think we have some handouts in the back. Is that right, Brian? Okay, thank you. And then in October, the our We Care campaign is going to be for the community food bank, and there will be a list available of what their needs are. Thank you very much for your participation.